Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. For news last week, we of course have the announcement of the new quantum cores. I did make an extra video on that because for structure owners it's actually pretty important that you know about this dev block. Basically, by January you can expect a new item called a quantum core to be necessary for the operations of your structures, even the ones that are like fueled for years. And so make sure that you don't have any of those that you can't afford to lose up and running, and then take a break because you could potentially find them again like in structure without any of the services running, and of course easily destroyed because of that as well. So fair warning, I hope that we can reach enough people here so that we don't get too many people caught off guard, just like with the abandoned state that did catch quite a few people off guard. Next up here, there's also of course a new proving ground going on at the moment, 2 versus 2 Caldari teamed. I really enjoyed the 5v5 free-for-all brawl myself, but the others, they need a bit more organization and things like that, and well, I basically don't feel like I've got the time for that. But if you want to, of course, they're still up and running. I personally am sort of curious to see if CCP will ever come out with some feedback on the popularity of some of the proving grounds that they have been running, because I'm very curious as to how many people are enjoying it, which ones are the most popular. Especially the rookie ships. I mean, I didn't take part in that. I don't see the point in getting into rookie ships for PvP, but perhaps some people did enjoy it. I don't know. We'll see how all of that evolves, of course. Next up, as always, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store, see if there's anything interesting going on here. We do have some more sales happening, and it is a special day for the Caldari, and so it looks like the Kimotoro Esketan skin is up for sale here on quite a few ships. Actually looks really cool, some gold, silver, and then some darker gray tones here. So you've got it for the Caracal, the Bustard Crane, some transport ships, Eagle, Hawk, Harpy, Flycatcher, Leviathan. Actually looks really impressive with that, and quite a few, in fact all of those are on sale at the moment. If you fly Caldari, then you can definitely try to grab those colors in today's sale. And then we still have the Blue Star Defender skins for the Edencom ships marked as new at the moment, and that is about it. Is the Omega time? Let's see, do I have to like look for that? Does it recognize? All right. Oh, there we go, finally. No, so that sale is now over. 30-day Omega clone time. Okay, well, let's see what's happening on the market. Then, as always, we'll start with some plex and stuff, and that's coming in at 325. Like that, and let's get going with plex. Quick check that the screen is looking okay. Yeah, recording is looking all right. And well, there's someone coming in with a few plex in Jita 4.4 just below 2.8 million, but most of them start at 2.82 million, which is still up a little bit from last week. Obviously, we had a little bit of interest here because of the Omega sale that was happening. You can clearly see 3 days of increased volumes, a nice jump up from the price, and then a little bit of a pullback on the 5-day moving average. But you can see that daily average is actually staying at its current price range, 2.63. Today's 2.65 million for the average price of plex, so that is not that bad. As we know, 2.8 million for the sellers in Jita, going down to 2.74 million for the sellers in the Tranquility Trading Towers, and then buyers are just above 2.6 million for Jita and still just above 2.6 million. So a bit of time needed to digest that increased interest from the CCP sale, which lots of people have said, well, it is something that we've had before. Honestly, I never noticed it, which is kind of strange. It's not since yesterday that I started taking a look at sales on the on the store, but apparently this is a sale that does happen from time to time. I think usually CCP just discounts the plex. Here discounting the omega time clearly had a unique impact on the plex market, because mostly what you see is increased volumes that drive the price down. That is when CCP sells the plex for a cheaper price, and here you get the exact opposite. So CCP discounts omega time, meaning that more plex will be sunk into the faucet and more demand is needed in order to satisfy everyone, and so you get that increased price on that increased volume. Very interesting to see both those levers basically in CCP's hands and in action here on both of these charts. So you get the downwards one on the increased volumes, and then you get the increased one on the increased volumes as well. Next up, let's take a quick look at the multiple pilot train certificate. Did jump up, probably in response to the plex prices, although we don't see a major volume response here. Starts below 1.3 billion, is now almost 1.4 billion for the sellers in the Tranquility Trading Tower. Well above that, almost 1.5 billion in fact for the sellers in JITA 4.4, and the buyers are just below 1.3 billion. So a nice jump up here as well from basically a summer bottom that is now being formed by this action. Clearly June, July, August are bottom prices for both plex and the multiple pilot train certificate. The further evolution, I still think that it depends a little bit on CCP's announcements as well, but summer is ending. We should see more time spent online, even more time spent online, despite the difficult real-life situation for a lot of players, and a return to routines as children go back to school and things like that. I personally do expect an increase in activity and an increase in demand, hopefully not just for plex but also for PI, which has been down the drain for a lot longer than just this summer actually. Next up, the skill extractors, of course, following the plex price very closely, and you can see that 20-day moving average still slowly increasing, 5-day moving average having that very same impact, and the daily average is actually flat. 307 million for the sellers, above 300 million for the buyers, so there is a little bit of demand that is keeping the price in check from again reaching that summer bottom region. For our injectors, that's where it could be interesting. We have a very clear bottom, like 10 days into August, and now an upward trend for the 5-day moving average. That's actually still continuing at the moment, despite the fact that we are just above 700 million is for the average price, 702 million for the sellers, 677 for the buyers. And I bought one of these large scale injectors a little bit early, but still below the 700 million mark. So I think that we may be in some into a good trade if my presumption is correct that the increased activity will bring increased demand for plex, for skill injectors, and for all of that good stuff after the summer ending. CCP building up some hype with some announcements could be pretty awesome, and well, I think there's like a fourth quarter, a final chapter coming as well for like the winter. If they can build up enough hype, that's where potentially, of course, we could make some real risk if the evolution goes the way I want it, of course. It's a lot of ifs, I know, but I think trying to trade is always about that. Then we've got these small scale injectors that have that very same pattern. Went down to a bottom well below 140 million ISK, and now we are back well above that. 141 million for the sellers, 132 million for the buyers. And how do you explain a chart that's well above 140 while we have sellers at 140 million? Well, that is JITA, of course. 149 million for the sellers here, and the fact that we are reaching these prices means that there's people that are basically so entrenched in their habit to buy in JITA that they don't even go for a Tranquility Trading Tower, despite the fact that it's like 9 million is less to purchase these small scale injectors. I'd say that's worth one jump, but nope, there's people clearly buying in JITA as well at these inflated prices. But the trend may just be starting here. We do see a bit of a drying up in JITA itself that could put even more pressure on the price as well. Less supply, a bit more demand, and here's the evolution. Clearly a bottom again in August. After that, we still have our daily alpha injectors that have really proven over the course of this summer that they are their own unique market. It's not really tied to the large and the small scale injector market, which do generally follow a similar pattern. And it's done so by actually reaching 40 million ISK in August, when the other injectors were actually bottoming out. This one was reaching, well, not a 1 year peak, but definitely a higher price than it's been in like 4 or 5 months. And now we actually are in the pullback phase, going back down towards 35 million at the moment. It's still almost 38 million for the sellers, but the buyers have opened up a reasonable gap, 33.5 for those. That is a decent margin on a good that's actually on the downtrend, whereas most of the other stuff in plex stuff is going back up. Then we have the hypercores, and this I find very interesting for my theory, my conjecture that activity may just be increasing as summer is ending. We do have a jump up in the price of the hypercores as well. Most of the summer holding just above 280,000 ISK, and now 290,000 for the sellers in JITA, 273,000 for the buyers, and a very clear increased trend here on the 5-day moving average and the daily averages away from that low activity period. So another telltale sign that, yeah, perhaps people are actually coming back even more to EVE Online. Something that's contradicting that is the volumes, though. Those are down quite a lot all of a sudden. So yeah, not uniformly good. If that would have gone up as well, that would have clearly showed increased demand and thus higher prices. But right now it's still up in the air. We'll see in the upcoming weeks, of course. Next up, let's take a look at the minerals coming in at 1135. So as always, we'll start with the smallest mineral here is a titanium that on the chart is staying just below 8 ISK, but clearly seeing upwards pressure here as well. Very nice performance in my opinion. And then if we go to JITA, they're actually selling for 8 ISK 13 at the moment. Above 8 ISK is a very good price for titanium. 768 for the buyers is not that big of a margin, so we can still say that titanium is very expensive at the moment, and something that you can definitely focus on when you are mining Veldspar. Stuff like Veldspar, compressed Veldspar, compressed dense Veldspar is bound to be very expensive and worth producing at the moment. I will also mention this here. I mentioned it in another video as well, but I have sold most of my minerals and compressed ore stocks at this point. I feel like it's the right time to do so. There is still this chance that the triglavins may mess with JITA at some point, and then I don't want to be stuck with too many bulky items there. So I did liquidate a lot of these assets. We're well above average for most of them, especially stuff like Veldspar. Mexlon is doing really great. I decided to not take any chances with what's happening with the triglavin invasions, with the fourth quarter coming. I just said, you know, we're selling, let's try to stay nimble. If something were to happen, I can pretty easily move all of that stuff out in decently short order without having to go too many trips and things like that. With all the minerals and stuff that I had there, it would have been a lot more trouble. Just to give you guys that full disclosure on this. Next up here, we've got the pyrite market, and that's very good news, I think, for miners as well. Back above 6 ISK on the chart, and stemming the bleeding here when we went to 8 ISK at the high point. At the moment, we are selling for 620, and the buyers coming in at 577. It's good to see that this decline is finally stopping and that we're back above 6. Let's hope that we get some momentum on this. Titanium is building back up as well. I think I read that there's been like a super capital engagement somewhere. I'm not sure what the losses have been there, but yeah, as more structures get destroyed, as more large ships get destroyed, this is very good news for these base minerals, because that increases demand by big chunks every time. Let's see what Mexlon is doing. Did go below 90 ISK, but is basically flat for the week, well above 80, I think even above 85 is for the average price. Yeah, it's 86, which, I mean, you can see it on this 1-year chart, but even historically speaking, this is very expensive for Mexlon. So Mexlon Titanium, it's been like that for a couple months at this point, but definitely your focus for mining makes it absolutely worth it. And at the moment we are talking about 90 ISK in fact for the sellers and 83 ISK for the buyers. Look at those buyers forced up into very expensive prices. That is a super impressive performance, and basically I feel like Mexlon has reasserted itself as the bottleneck material needed in nullsec to keep the engines of production and industry running there. It is something that they need to import, that they can't just reliably produce themselves anymore, and so you get this massive increase in price and this massive increase in the demand price as well. They're just forced up here, and I think it is by not local industry but industry outside of Jita. Then we've got Isogen that was also going down in price, but seems to be stabilizing at the current range as well, around 23 ISK. High point was 30. That was just a bit of a flash in the pan event, but after that 25 ISK, definitely still a good performance for the year. We're talking 23.58 for the sellers and 23.23 for the first buyer. That's also pretty important, despite the fact that we still have 100 million here, 250 million units here. Demand is starting to compete with these prices, and apparently for some reason feel some pressure to go up in ISK as well. I think it's just a matter of time before these volumes get absorbed as well, and then we could be looking at Isogen back at 25 and above. It depends a little bit on the trends, and hopefully there is still more action to come in nullsec, more destruction. Minerals are a part of structures as well. Well, the new cores do I think in all likeliness mean more destruction of these structures, so that could mean even more demand by the end of the year. I may have sold early, I'll be honest, but it's looking positive at the moment. All of these minerals this week apparently up in price a little bit. After that, we've got the Noxium market that is climbing to yet another 1-year high now, going towards 700 ISK. This is really the winner of the summer. Still started the summer at 300 ISK, a little bit above what it started the year at, and now we are talking 700 ISK practically. I mean 697.80. That's pretty much 700 ISK for the sellers, 650 almost for the buyers. Again, showing that demand is apparently really high for all of these minerals, and they're basically giving more and more room for the sellers to ask higher prices. 700 ISK for Noxium, we haven't seen that in a long time now. I remember 1100 ISK Noxium, but I think those were like really high points, and so this is really a very impressive and nice comeback for Noxium in just 2 months time, more than double the price, and going for 700 at the moment. Definitely something that you can focus on as well if you can produce it. Not all high-sec systems can produce this. But this is very impressive, of course. Yet another 1-year high point, and confirming the trends that at the moment there must be a lot of destruction happening somewhere. Presumably it is the war, and we may see increased demand continue as the war rages on. Let's hope that all these parties can stay motivated, and that we see more destruction, because for us miners and us traders, this is of course very nice. After that, we have our former nullsec minerals. Here is Zydrine, still stable above 1000 ISK. I think that is very reasonable. 1100 ISK for the sellers, above 1000 ISK for the buyers. Again, really narrow margin for these high prices. It's very impressive. That still means that potentially we could go even higher. But again, on this 1-year performance for Zydrine, double the price, very nice, and definitely back into historical ranges. This is a normal price for Zydrine. The only one that's really lagging behind a little bit is Megasites. still hesitating to pull away from 500 disc. When above that is back down below that. So this one is definitely still struggling. 491 for the sellers and 434 for the buyers. It's a bit of a weird story. Megasite used to be, outside of morphite, the most expensive mineral. It used to really be the hardest to get mineral for Tech 1 production, and to see it still be half the price of Sidrine feels unnatural to someone that's been playing for such a long time, but this is just a reality. I know that Edencom sites with the Triglavian ores there do yield as megasite, but I thought I also saw some Zydrine in there, so yeah, it really looks like Zydrine has become the bottleneck at the moment, the hardest to get mineral or the most needed mineral compared to its production, and Megasite clearly lagging behind in that. And I don't think it is volumes or old stocks that are still around there, because look at this, it's one order of 4 million, and then you've got really very small numbers. So I really don't think that it's like old sleeping megasite reserves that are coming back to the market whenever we get a better price. This is just supply that is still high enough to keep the price in check. And then finally we have morphite that is also going back down here after a very strong spring, April, May here. Incredible prices up to 20,000 disc. Now we need to be below 10,000 disc for me to say, yeah, I want to invest in that, but it looks like some players have decided to move in a little bit before that. You can clearly see that on this downtrend here, as we reached maybe 11k or something like that, yeah, less than 11,000 disc on the downside. Volumes have increased and we're starting to move back up here. 12,500 for the sellers, 11,660 for the buyers. So we're not going to see that buy opportunity below 10,000 disc. The market has decided that below 11,000 is definitely buy worthy already for morphite. Understandable, but I personally am gonna wait for below 10,000 disc to be sure of my return, or somewhat more sure of my return, but it looks like we'll need a little bit more time for that to happen. Alright, let's move on to the mineral market, coming in at 2120. Like that, and well, let's see, right? Plex going back up, summertime ending, is activity increasing? Are we seeing some increased demand for PI materials? Well, this one, of course, I don't think, well, this is too early, or is it? Very interesting, I would say. For the advanced PI materials, we have to keep the dev block on the new quantum cores in mind. Of course, they promise more destruction and thus potentially more demand for structures, of course. And we do have a price jump from a one-year low point, so it's also potentially investors that have made a very good choice to buy this super low point. Let's see what the very lowest average daily price was. 1.6 million ISK, and we're now up to almost 2 million, 1.94 million for the sellers, 1.8 million for the buyers. So this is a jump up that's probably been from before. The dev block on smart investments that could end up becoming very lucrative then. After that, we got construction blocks that is trying to defend 10,000 disc, but today's average is below that. Yeah, unfortunately, sellers back below 10,000 disc, buyers at 9,000 disc. The pressure is still on for construction blocks, although it is trying to get back on that 10,000 disc average price. Historically, though, I think 11,500 is actually possible for construction blocks, so it's still not that great. Consumer electronics are flattening out, but as well below 10,000 disc. We do see volume increases in the last few days. 11,000 for the sellers, 9,700 for the buyers. That's actually up here for the sellers. They are trying, but they're not succeeding. On the other hand, if demand increases, you would first expect this to flatten out and to show some signs of increasing, which the 5-day moving average is starting to do. Hopefully we can increase that demand and we can start to get closer to that 11,000 average price, which also, I mean, we've been struggling for such a long time that the chart isn't showing that, but I would dare to say that consumer electronics can get to 12,000, even 12,500 disc for a normal price. That's not a crazy price for consumer electronics. After that, we have our coolants that is also well showing the first signs of trying to get back above 10,000 disk here on slightly bigger volumes. 10,350 for the sellers, still 9,000 disk for the buyers. That is very low, of course, but it's also up a little bit for the week. Cryoprotectant solutions, slight jump up, so pulling away from that 100,000 disk here, basically in a normal range. 111,000 for the sellers, 101 for the buyers. This is one of those with the big March increase in price, so tied to the production of implants, and something to keep in mind, right? At some point CCP will probably make, I say that every week, I know, but this is really the pattern that I'm looking at. For these specific PI materials, at some point CCP will announce, in all likeliness, we always have to keep that in mind, but it's very likely that CCP will at some point announce new implants specifically for the Edencom chips. Only makes sense since the Triglavians have their implant set that they're working on that, and when they do, you can expect needs for cryoprotectant solutions, and I think it's also Yukomi superconductors. So right now what I'm looking for is real buy opportunities. Get those buyers below 100,000 disk. That's when I'm trying to jump in, get ready for that eventual announcement, and that's how you can make a lot of risk potentially on what CCP announces. Don't go crazy and say, well, that's gonna happen anyways, we're gonna buy lots of cryoprotectant solutions right now. That is not the solution in my opinion. Slowly try to buy for really low prices, just to be ready at the moment, I think is a better strategy. Enriched uranium, well, it's good news at the tail end. We are pulling back up from 10,000 disk, but it is still really slow. 10,700 for the sellers, 10,360 for the buyers, showing that buyers are increasing their price a little bit, but of course we have a ways to go for a average normal price. 13,500, something like that, I think easily doable for enriched uranium. So this is still not great, but the first few signs of increased demand are there. Now integrity response drones is riding its second wave. I think here it is going to become a bit more structural because of the dev block. This is an advanced PI material. 2 million for the sellers, 1.9 million for the buyers, and yeah, you had two opportunities in July and in August to buy probably close to 1.5 million right here on these two downturns. Some investors clearly did look at these volumes, but we covered that. They went very smart. They stayed, I think, below 1.75, 1.8 million for the clear purchases right there. So they bought the very best stuff. And now with this dev block, it really looks like whoever bought here and here will have made a very, very big purchase for the medium term. By the time everyone has to switch to these quantum cores, we'll see more turnover, we'll see more demand, and we should see substantially higher prices be maintained by the market. Combine that with, again, increased activity, hopefully so a little bit of hype over the winter for the final quadrant, and I mean, you could really be looking at very, very good prices for advanced PI materials. Then we get our mechanical parts that are back up above 10,000 disk. Also again, last week or so, increased price even on the 5-day moving average pretty violently. 10,700 for the sellers, that's pretty reasonable. Buyers still below 10,000 disk, but a bit of pressure mounting here as well, going ever closer to that price. So not bad. I'm seeing those signs, a little bit of increased demand. It's definitely starting to look like it. It's still early though. Nanites also 5-day moving average, clearly trying to go back up a little bit. Volumes up a little bit at the tail end here. 6,780 for the sellers, 5,900 for the buyers. Let's see if by next week or the week after that we can get above 6,000 disk for the buyers. That would be nice to confirm that comeback basically. Now here we have another advanced PI materials, nano factories, and here you can see the trend break like a couple of days ago. Clearly demand is up, and clearly that is in tandem with the dev block. 1 million ISK now for the sellers of nano factories, but the buyers are up above 900,000 ISK as well. So your buy opportunities for advanced PI materials, it really looks like they're over. I think I covered them plenty, and I've said a lot of times, yeah, try to buy those really low prices. Don't go crazy with the volumes. I have some advanced PI materials ready myself, but right now that dev block hit, I don't think those low points are coming back. organic mortar applicators, even last Eve talk, or maybe the one before that, we were at 1 year low points below 800,000 disc, and here now you can see the response happening. 1 million again for the sellers, 920,000 for the buyers. Normal average price is 1 million. We're already getting very close to that, and this is very clearly also the dev block has increased volumes, increased interest, and so your buy opportunity, yeah, it's over. Recursive computing model, a little bit different. It's still an advanced PI material, but this one was already at its 1.5 million range, and so it's able to get back to that and not move too much from this range right now. 1.5 million for the sellers, 1.45 million for the buyers. And so you could say, well, why isn't this one going up? It, in my opinion, makes perfect sense, because this one doesn't start at a discounted price, doesn't start anywhere close to 1 year low point. It was already back at its yearly average of 1.5 million. So this one, it's not where the ISK is flowing. What would you buy? Recursive computing modules or organic mortar applicators in this range? This is of course where all the ISK is flowing. All of these are pushed back to their average ranges. Then we've got robotics, very important in my opinion to measure increased demand, and here definitely still seeing some hesitation. At least we're above our 1 year low point of 80,000 disc, but buyers are still below that at 79,000, 86,000 for the sellers, so this is still not great. Self-harmonizing power cores confirming the trend right here in July, June, bottom at 1.5 million ISK. We're back up to almost 2 million for the sellers, 1.9 for the buyers. Again, obviously related to the dev block. Sterile conduits confirming that again, and this was your final opportunity basically here. 1 year low point of 900,000, 1, 2, 3 times, twice in July and August again. But dev block hits and we're back to 1.25 million for the sellers, 1.15 million for the buyers. Demand is here, people know that this is gonna happen, and as a result, yeah, this was your summer to invest in advanced PI materials. I hope you grabbed at least some of it. Now my horizon, again, winter, could be very interesting as people try to get ready for that increased destruction and things like that. Speculation should reach its peak, especially if CCP announces some cool stuff as well. Hype for this winter could be high for me for some of my trades. Next up, we've got the Yukomi superconductors, basically in line with what were the cryoprotectant solutions. So this is another one that I keep one eye on for potential investments when it comes to an implant announcement. But yeah, 79,000 for the sellers, 77,000 for the buyers, potentially below 50,000. That's where I would make my move. So feels early to me. And then finally we get to wetware mainframes. That is actually staying quite shy in its increased in price. Volumes though are clearly up, and we are now talking about 1.75, but very quickly going to 1.8 million for the sellers, 1.6 million for the buyers. Definitely a little bit shy. Why? Because we're nowhere near that bottom price, which was in July. And basically the market was a bit more robust in demand for wetware mainframes, and this could, looking at every single chart, this could still be your opportunity. Wetware mainframes normal price above 2 million, we're still well away for that. If you have completely missed the advanced PI material train, then this is the one that I would still try to grab at least a couple of. Alright, very interesting. We'll see in the upcoming weeks how things evolve, but for now we'll move on to the advanced moon materials, 3245. And so this one, I saw a very interesting comment last week that a lot of these tied to Tech 2 production were actually pulling back to 1 year low points, and a possible explanation is that the fall of Niarja has basically decentralized JITA as being the trade hub where you would always pick up your Tech 2 materials. No matter where you were producing, and so everyone that's producing close to a Mars space might actually be switching to other trade hubs, because it's now just such a long haul to bring these materials to your industry facilities. And that may be a very interesting theory. If that is true, then this could edge the reaction of the players towards, well, JITA suffering a little bit for bulky items, stuff that require bigger ships to move them around, and there we could see a more local resurgence. That would be very good news for Amar regions, of course. If they become more self-sufficient, we could see increased industry activities there, and just generally getting two poles rather than only JITA completely dominating things. Have seen quite a few calls as well for what are the prices in Amar looking like. I'm very curious myself, but I need to think about how I would set something like that up, because that does become very complex and very time consuming. But perhaps I'll put one of my alts in Amar or Rens, or heck, I'll take a look at which of these trade hubs may be increasing as a result of the fall of Nyarja, and then perhaps do some sort of coverage from those as well. I do think it could be super interesting also for traders. I mean, it is a lot of work, but work is generally rewarded in the sandbox. And so yeah, bringing stuff from Amar to JITA, finding those trades and actually covering those price differences could be very interesting and lucrative. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure what I want to do. But let's get started here. Crystalline Carbonites for Galente production. Definitely not confirming the theory just yet. We have a very nice comeback back to 150 ISK, 158 in fact for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. But this was not one of those that was actually declining substantially to a 1-year low point last week. So this one was below average but was already increasing. And so very interesting to see crystalline carbonite increase back to 150. But this is tied to Galente ships. Galente and Caldari are not that far away from each other, and so that could also be possible. And I think about it, what if Caldari and Galente will be focused around their own spaces, and then we would need to see Amar and Minmatar actually drop off here and increase in value in the local trade hubs. Interesting. Let's see what the others are doing then. Photonic. So this is Galente. Yeah, that's the 1.2. Now I'm looking for 2.1. There it is. Titanium carbide for Caldari. Still staying above 150, not at its average 175 just yet, but 161 for the sellers, 161 for the buyers as well, showing slightly increased demand here. Could get back to an average price pretty easily, not doing too badly. And then we have our 3.1 Ferrite carbide for Minmatar, that is just staying at a below average price, 133 for the sellers. Okay, that's up a little bit, at least it feels like it. 123 for the buyers is still well below that 125 threshold though. So demand not that great for Ferrite carbide, and definitely the cheapest of the three so far. And then we have our 4.1 tungsten carbide for Amar production. That one is staying at that 1-year low point, well below 175. 171 for the sellers, 164 for the buyers. Very, very cheap right here. Availability, I'm gonna expect then that this is not that, well, this is reasonable. This is definitely reasonable. Could be stocks here, but this is, to me, very, very interesting. Caldari, Galente, average prices actually going up in price. Minmatar, that's, you know, in between, but that one is definitely not doing very well. And then Amar, tight advanced materials, very, very low, 1-year low point, super pronounced. Let's see what our metamaterials are doing in response. 2.1 is titanium carbide for Caldari ships. 1.1 is Galente, so it's 1.2 that I'm looking for. There we go. Photonic meta materials for Galente ships. Ooh, that is not great news. Going down in price, 13.8 thousand for the average daily average so far. 1-year low points, yep, 13,500 for the sellers, 10,200 for the buyers. A clear lack of demand for these metamaterials here, driving the price to a 1-year low point. Let's take a look at 2.2 non-linear metamaterials for Caldari production. Was not doing well when below 20,000 ISK. Can it work its way above that? Sellers at least just above 20k, buyers at 19,200. That one is stabilizing, but not at a great price. Then we have 3.2 plasmonic metamaterials for the Minmatar, staying well below average at the moment. 17,340 for the sellers, 16,540 for the buyers. And then we have our 4.2 terahertz metamaterials. That is just diving off a cliff to yet another 1 year low point. 16,300 for the sellers, 16,000 for the buyers. This is very, very interesting. It's definitely looking like it's pulling away demand and interest in these types of products from JITA. And where is all of that demand going? It could be local production, and Amar space has now been pulled out of range of Caldari space. They're basically at the two highest points away from each other in HiSec at the moment for stuff like these, and you can clearly see the result of that. People producing Amar ships may really be more into that when they are in Amar space itself, and as a result, demand just isn't there anymore, and all of that stuff may be moving locally. Very interesting. We'll definitely keep an eye on that, and perhaps in the upcoming weeks, if this trend continues, I will take a look at what's happening in Amar, Renshek, and those places. We still have some other products to take a look at for the general trend. So I think last week this was not great. Most of them under pressure. Fermionic condensate still not doing too well. Is it going below 80,000 disk? No, 81,600 for the sellers, 78,000 for the buyers. Looks like that 80,000 range may be defended. Then we've got ferrogel that's also bouncing back, but from a 1 year low point practically of 35,000 disks. So this is just a pullback from a very bad range. Fullerite is a bit more interesting. Had a very good summer, well above 1,000 disk, and then just blew right through that to a 1 year low point of 820 ISK, and here is also now forming its bottom, basically 890 ISK for the sellers, 860 for the buyers. Yeah, this is just some investments that are being made at this 1 year low point. Makes a lot of sense in my book. Same thing here, right? This big decline, very close to 1 year low points, and investors coming in to very carefully grab the cheapest stuff. Hypersynaptic fibers, also bit of a push to 10,000 disk, and then you don't even see that much in volumes, but we're pulling back up 11,300 and 11,000 for the buyers. Nano transistors flat at its low range. This one was really an odd one, something we don't see very often. It was either doing this, buyers just below 5,000 disk, sellers with plenty of supply just above 5,000 disk, or it was buyers at the same range and sellers at 6,000 disk when there was not enough supply. That's really been the trend here for nano transistors. It's here, or it's here, or it's here, or it's a little bit in between for a while, but then again 6,000 disk back to 5K, and now we're back at one of these well supplied periods basically. Phenolic composites, that's not looking too good. So here we have a decline to 1 year low point of 1,500 disk. Bit of investments pushing it back to 1,750, but it looks like whoever bought here did catch a falling knife, because we're going back down. Less than 1,600 for the sellers, 1,351 for the buyers. Very, very cheap, very low. Potentially again, 1,300 ISK for the buyers. That's down here on the chart. If you can try through a buy order, I would not blame you to try to stock up at least on some of that super cheap phenolic composites. You never know when it makes that comeback, like this one. All right, a surprise comeback right at the end of this segment, showing that they never count this out though. Here are ceramic fibers, started at 350, definitely below average for the year, and we're now selling at 426, very nice increase in price, and buyers are up to 412 as well. And here we have actually prices went up to 450 and above here, so you never know when it happens. That does make that phenolic composite situation with buyers down here somewhere rather interesting potentially. But as I always say, don't go crazy with those volumes. Next up, let's take a look at the impact on some Tech 2 ships, coming in at 43.15. Did I say Tech 3? It's Tech 2 ships. Let's get started here. Last week, though, not a lot of opportunities. A couple of stealth bombers. I think the Hound was looking good. But we are talking generally very cheap production costs. So here's the Basilisk finally confirming that pressure going back down below 200 million ISK. 1 year low point, probably not yet, but 193 million for the sellers and 179 for the buyers. Buying a Basilisk for less than 180 million, if you look at this chart, makes a lot of sense. Definitely an opportunity right there if you want to. Cerberus had done really well through July and August to hold on to that 230 million average price. Normal price, nothing too crazy, but we've been struggling with advanced PI materials for most of the summer, and so this was very nice, a very strong performance actually for the Cerberus. But right now, to no avail. It's also finally dropping back to a range where I would say, yeah, perhaps we should look at a buy here. 212 million for the sellers, 188, almost 190 million for the buyers. So you can buy a Cerberus for less than 190 million ISK, which is down here on the chart. Another possibility for sure. Guardian was in that situation last week, I think, and right now is already moving back up on increased volumes, but staying away from that 200 million range. Yeah, 195 million for the sellers, 178 million for the buyers. You can still buy a Guardian below 180 million, and investors are starting to look into that pretty damn obviously. So you gotta be fast here. Basilisk is in this situation, Cerberus is in this situation, where the Guardian was last time, but investors are keeping a very close eye on all of this. The Hound was really low last week as well, and here, this is what I really like about the smaller ships, the stealth bombers. They sometimes have real momentum with oversupply to get to even lower price, and that seems to be happening right now. We're only now building our opportunities in the Basilisk and the Cerberus, and the Hound, let's see how low it is. 23 million below that for the sellers, 155 still here. It was like 260 last week, so we got maybe another 4 or 5 days to go, then this will be absorbed. But we are below 22 million for the buyers of Hounds. This is your opportunity to buy them for 22 million, and then look at the upward potential, 30, 35 million, and it's done so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 times over the last year. That is of course stuff that looks like this, like you can make really good trades in this one, and I have made several, so I can definitely confirm this. And right now we're still oversupplied with these 150. This is something that you're not gonna have in like the Cerberus, right? Here's 200 Cerberi at 200 million. That is of course going to crash the price to unknown depths, but for the Hound, for these smaller ships, that does happen, and it's happening right now in the Hound. Very interesting in my book. After that, we get the Ichthyrsa, a surprise increase in volumes and thus in a price. Complete lack of supply, 500 million ISK for an Ichthyrsa. Buyers though smart enough to stay where they're at, 390 million for those. So making looks like supply here is the problem for a Triglavian Tech 2 ship. Next up, we've got the Ishtar confirming, in my opinion, the troubles of the Tech 2 ships, but as a super versatile platform, PvP, PvE, it's got even exploration, other stuff. In my opinion, it can do almost everything because it is like a pocket carrier with its incredible drone capabilities. It is so popular that this one doesn't have the massive variations that some of the PvP specific ships do have, but it's confirming that, right now, oversupply is the name of the game. Well below 230 million now for the sellers, 222, decent supplies still coming in, 207 million for the first buyer, going down to 200 million very quickly at the moment. So then let's look at some other stealth bombers. The Manticore has always been a little bit shyer in its volatility and also doesn't want to go as low as the others, but right now it is starting to get towards 25 million on the average price, almost 26 for the sellers, 22 million for the buyers. And here, when there's still some volumes available, but it is not as crazy as the Hound. On the other hand, 22 million for the buyers. That's below the entire chart. it would make sense here as well. Try to grab a couple manticores for that price. I don't think you'll regret it. It's gonna be harder to make that happen because you don't have this supply waiting in line, and which this basically incentivizes people to dump to these buyers. Here in the manticore, there's a little bit less of that. Still enough, potentially, I think, to get a one close to 22 million, but you may need to go, well, let's take a look at this, 22.5 or something like that to be sure that you can grab it. After that, we get the Munin for Minmatar, also 1 year low point. So that is 190, below 200 million for the sellers, 175 million for the buyers. This is something that, you know, if you want to grab one of them, absolutely do so. And if you want to take a big gamble on the war, of course, Munin is a doctrine in the Imperium. I think other groups use it as well. And right now, 1 year low point, so you can grab a few very cheap ones if you want to. Then we've got the Nemesis, yeah, obviously landing on 20 million, and this one is a little bit bust. Yep, exactly. Oh man, I love this. This is so good. 22.7 million for the sellers, less than 19 million for the buyers. But look at the volumes here. Basically, the Nemesis was where the Hound is this week where the Hound is this week, that's where the Nemesis was last week. And now that bottom is already forming just above 20 million for the average price. So you can still try to grab a Nemesis below 20 million ISK for sure, but trying to get that 18.8, 19 million is gonna be very hard because the volumes aren't here anymore, and that means that sellers will have the turnover that they need to put up sell prices here, and not too many people will be crazy enough to bring 100 Nemesi at the current range either. So here, basically, you can still try to grab a cheap Nemesis, but you will have to be a bit more aggressive in your buying if you're going to actually make that trade happen. The Hound is your best spot to just put up a buy order like 21.9 and you have a very good chance of grabbing that. I personally like the volumes here as well, 4, 3, that's the stuff that I do as well. 100 million, that's like a sure thing. If you can grab it for this, right, if this guy gets them below 22 million, and then he can sell them for 32 million right there, 10 million per ship, just like that, no risk. Definitely something that's very doable. And I love the pattern here where we have basically the Nemesis being where the Cerberus, the Hound can be expected to be next week. The Aneros continue to struggle even lower, getting towards 150. So 161 million for the sellers, below 150 million for the buyers. Complete lack of demand, as I've been saying in the last couple of weeks. If you want to grab one of these, I wouldn't blame you, but don't buy too many because volumes just aren't there. The Panther is landing on 1.1, or is it going below that? Look at today's average prices. Interesting. 1.1 billion for the sellers and just above $1 billion for 2 buyers, and that is it. This to me is interesting. You do see the lower advanced move materials prices reflected in the average price here for the Panther, but it's not really sellers that are budging very quickly. It's the buyers that are just going, I need a lower price here, and that is slowly driving this down. After that, we've got the Purifier, 1 year low point as well, landing on 22.5 million ISK, 23 million for the sellers, 21 million for the buyers. Decent availability, but also not the 100, 200 plus ships that are here. So it is basically in the process here of landing. And so right now, yeah, you can probably grab a Purifier for like 22 million easily, considering these sell prices. And then you're again ready. Where are the potentials? 35 million, 30 million, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Very, very nice, lovely chart, and a great place to be looking at some bargain stealth bombers. Scimitar also going down in price, but again, this is a little bit more risky in the volumes. 187 million for the sellers, 172 million for the buyers. Lack of demand again. 1 year low point. Yes, we're pretty much there. If you want to grab a Scimitar, definitely do so now. And then we've got the Widow that is a little bit better at confirming that lower price range here on the chart. But let's take a look at where the sellers are at. 1.1 billion, actually just below that. That's, well, actually no, look at these average prices then. 1.1 billion. yeah, it's actually buyers that are grabbing widows for ever lower prices that are currently decreasing this. I did not expect that. I really thought that cheaper ships would eventually be like, all right, I'm going to produce a widow and I can still make a profit even if I go well below these sell orders. But it looks like that's very, very slow to materialize. And the buyers are much more eager to drive the price back down, which they're successfully doing because the average price is pulling well away from the sell prices here. Very interesting. Unless it's happening in the player-owned trade hubs. Let's take a quick look at that. Nope, nothing there. Interesting. Not what I expected here. And then finally we've got the Zealot that is also creating its bottom here at around 200 million ISK, 208 now for the sellers, 187 for the buyers. I have one Zealot that I bought on this decline, so that's the same story as with Dioneros. One makes sense in my opinion, but not too many. All right, let's move on to the Tech Tree ships coming in at 54.20. Like that. And yeah, let's take a look here. Oops, don't want to bounce against the microphone. So this was a massive surprise to me personally. We had a confessor spike up to 70 million ISK that has been absorbed and dealt with in record time. 4 days and we were back down below 40 million ISK. Haven't seen that before. 38 million now for the sellers on decent supply, perhaps a little bit too much, but nothing too crazy. And then 34 million for the buyers. This is something that is so fast that it basically has, we've not seen any impact last week on the other ships. So let's take a look here at the Hecate, kind of confirming that we're just, you know, while this spike happened right here in the confessor, the Hecate has just been constantly building back down from 50 million towards 40 million average price. 43.5 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers, and it is more expensive than the confessor by quite a bit, but you also see the supply here that should continue to close the gap. In fact, almost this entire front page, probably 200 to 300 Hecates have been brought in the last 24 hours. Normal response, as it is probably the most expensive one right now. Then we get the Jackdaw, that is indeed already stabilizing below 40 million ISK, 38 million for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers, basically the same price as that confessor. And supply wise 40, 40, 24, everything else is very reasonable. Couple of new sellers in the last 24 hours. This is normal for a normal price range. And then finally we get the Zwebel, that's also up to 40 million ISK. Just below that for the sellers, 37 for the buyers. A little bit more supply here in the last 24 hours, but because this is a very good price actually for the Zwebel. So I thought that this confessor spike would turn into an opportunity wave across all the other destroyers, but it was so short-lived that basically we're back in normal prices for Confessor, Jackdaw and Zwebel. Decent supplies, nothing crazy. Hecate has a bit more supply, but also needs to basically go back down a little bit because it is selling at a nice premium and the industrial response is here. So it's a normal market, but I've never seen a spike of almost double the price on a day here be absorbed that quickly. That is pretty damn crazy. Then we have our cruisers. I have a Legion and a Loki ready if we ever see a spike, but at the moment that is not happening. So the Legion is continuing to hover between 130 and 140 million. You can buy them for 123. Definitely super cheap if you want to take that gamble with me. I'm not calling these investments the same way I would on some of the destroyers, because here I do feel like, you know, you can expect now the Hecate to drop back off, and eventually that should mean that no, actually, yeah, that should not mean less supply in these. So we gotta be a little careful, but here I feel like you can sometimes predict what's going to happen, and when one of them is very clearly at a low point, you can buy and you will almost always make a profit on that one. But here, look at the availability. Last 24 hours, 3 ships have been brought in. That's it. And despite that, despite the fact that we see a front page with maybe 40, 50 legions, and then we just see more supplies in very small volumes. So despite the fact that the availability is super small, I mean, one player with not even a very big wallet could buy everything that's available here, and we are at 1 year low prices with buyers going at 123 below the entire chart. That is the crazy situation that to me feels unnatural, and to me makes this feel like a bit more of a risk. The low key is just confirming that. Really very, very low prices. 145 million for the sellers, 133 for the buyers. You can definitely grab a cheap one, but prices are not moving, and we have one sell order in the last 24 hours of 2 ships. That's it. And this price is just staying at the bottom. On this is it, the highest volume for a single sell order in the front page here is 3, and we're going from 145 up to 157 million, and despite the fact that nothing is coming in, we're still at these crazy low prices. So you could buy one, I have, but I consider this a gamble, not an investment. Then we have the Proteus that is basically confirming the bad place for Tech 3 cruisers at the moment. Down to 130. Also again, it's 1 year low point. Buyers are at 117. That is super cheap. And we have again, last 24 hours, 2 ships, 2 sell orders, 2 ships. That's it. And this is what, 20, 30 ships here on the full front page. That's nothing. For such low prices, this really doesn't feel very good. Tengu has a bit more supply, 147 for the sellers, 134 for the buyers. Basically, it's a little bit higher than its bottom price compared to all the others, and that's probably why there's a bit more supply coming into the Tengu. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, but it does mean that at the moment they are very, very cheap. Definitely go for a buy price though, because that's undercutting all of this by a lot more every single time. And then finally, for the extra product this week, I'm choosing the shield rigs. It's been a long time since we've taken a look at some of the salvage related stuff, coming in at 1 hour and 20 seconds. Like it's a long one this time, but that's okay. At least I hope that this time YouTube can get the video up in high quality quickly enough. It was definitely not my doing. So we get rigs and then shield rigs. Let's take a look. Let's start with some of the small ones. We're gonna go over this pretty quickly, but see if we can spot a trend or anything like that. Small core defense capacitor safeguards, definitely a slight jump up here. Last week 15,000 currently. Yeah, empty at 53,000. That's interesting. Volumes are terrible though. Right now, this one is confirming we're paying a premium. This one is down. This one is normal. This one is normal. I'm just going to go quickly through these thick ones. I think the small ones, yeah, we basically don't see enough of these to really get a good view. Let's start with mediums next here. 100,000 disc for core defense capacitor safeguard. Feels like it's slightly expensive. Yeah, 100,000 right here. Maybe we should try to stick to some of the more popular ones, because here on these volumes doesn't make for a good chart. But then defense field extender, that ought to be a popular one, is actually below average at the moment. 1.5 million. Normal 2 million, so this is actually pretty cheap. Field purge is also, I think, really popular, definitely below average. That's interesting. That's completely different. Yep, EM Shield Enforcer confirming a very low price then in the mediums. That's interesting. Okay, so it's gonna be thick ones then. Let's take a look at the large ones. Core defense field capacitor going down in price. Economizer, yeah, terrible. We won't get any good trends out of this one. Defense field extender, that ought to see enough trade. Yeah, starts the year at around 10 million ISK, then went down to 7.5 and is currently actually slightly below that for the average. Yeah, 7.2 million for the sellers, 6.5 million for the buyers. Let's take a look at the field purger. That one is slightly up in price at the tail end, but still staying also at 7.5 million, so still pretty damn cheap. Bit of a spike in the operational solidifier, but already down to 8 million for the sellers. EM Shield Enforcer, not really anything too noticeable here. Slight jump in some of them. That's interesting. Maybe that's tied to that is tied to the new proving grounds. If they can basically plug a very specific actually for a battleship doesn't make too much sense. No, not sure. Some of these are spiking, but across the board I'm kind of seeing very cheap rigs at the moment. Let's try the Capital Shield Extender. Yeah, starts the year at 40 to 50 million ISK and is currently selling for 32 million ISK. And then the Defense Field Purger, yeah, that's not enough in volumes to give us any good reads on that. So, alright, we don't get that much information out of this quick look at these shield rigs, but my vibe is there are some interesting spikes here and there in some individual rigs, but across the board the popular ones actually feel like they're below average and decently cheap, which is not that good news for salvagers. I think at the moment they're probably not making that much ISK. Perhaps I'll just write this down for next week already. We'll take a look at salvage materials. It's made me curious though. Salvage mats, that's coming in for the extra product next week, but we're already past an hour, so that's gonna be it for this Eve Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.